Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. So excited for this one. It's going to be great. We've got an awesome topic to speak to, along with an epic panel to speak to their specific strengths and their experience within this specific topic. So it's going to be great. We're going to have a lot of fun. We got you guys for an hour today. We're going to try and use up all the time. It's going to be great. I want to introduce our incredible panel first and foremost. So just give me one sec. I want to share my screen here. One second here. Okay, we're almost ready to rock. So today we've got a great topic to speak to, and what we're going to be speaking about is how to turn average SDRs into top performers. And we've got three awesome sales managers, SDR managers here to speak to this topic through their experience. They know it inside and out. It's going to be great. And they're going to share their winning frameworks on how to turn those average SDRs into top performers. So the agenda we want to talk about today and the specific talking points that we want to kind of give to our audience to take away, to be able to put it into their day-to-day is, first one, working with reps who hate cold calling. I personally hated cold calling when I first started as an SDR. So this is going to be good to hear how Jessica, Ashley, and Caitlin all kind of manage that specific situation. Secondly, we're going to change the mindset of underperforming reps. How do we do that? You know, it can be challenging, right? Especially when you're in the war zone. A lot of other reps are doing very well. How do you motivate your other reps to perform at top notch? And third, how do we create a culture of respect and trust in this remote environment? It's been very challenging over the last year. So how do we make sure we're giving the reps everything they need in this remote situation? So without further ado, I want to introduce our panel. So first off, Jessica Jacobs, Manager of Sales Development at Drift. Thank you so much for being here, Jessica. Really appreciate it. Super excited to hear what you have to say about all the talking points. Please, if you don't mind, just giving the audience who may not know who you are, a bit of a background of how you got to where you are, kind of your superhero origin story, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here today. My name is Jessica Jacobs. I manage the enterprise outbound team and the chat SDR team here at Drift. I have been at Drift for about 8 months now, recently relocated to Tampa, Florida. Before coming to Drift, I was at CrowdStrike, a big cybersecurity company. However, when I started, I guess way back in the day at this point, I started as an SDR when CrowdStrike was still in a startup mode. I was one of the first probably 20 employees out of the Austin office and worked my way up into a team lead role. When I found out there was a team lead role available, I determined I had to have it. I went to my boss and I said, team lead role, I want this. I want to move forward. How do I get it? He told me, prove that you deserve it. And I was like, all right, bring it on. So worked my way into a team lead role, eventually got promoted into management, helped grow the team in Austin at CrowdStrike from 1 SDR team of 8 to 4 SDR teams of 8. When the pandemic hit, came back to Philadelphia, thought I'd be home for like 5 months or a couple weeks, stayed for 5 months and really had to ask myself why I wasn't feeling this pull to get back to Austin. What I realized was that I wanted to get back into a startup environment. CrowdStrike had gone public, which is absolutely incredible. The growth there was fantastic, but I was really looking for more of an opportunity to help grow an organization and make an impact, grow a team again. And so really been able to get my hands on a ton of stuff at Drift, and I'm super excited to be here with everyone today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Really appreciate the introduction there to set the stage for everyone that may not have met you in the past. I'm sure there's quite a few here that are involved.
Probably most. This is my second webinar, so hello.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great. Okay, moving on. Jessica, thank you. Secondly, here, we have Caitlin Kelly, Senior SDR Manager from Outreach. Caitlin, can you please just give us a bit of background on who you are, how you got to where you are in your little superhero origin story.
Yes, I will. I will do my best to top Jessica's introduction. That was fantastic, Jessica. Very well said. So yeah, I'm Caitlin Kelly. I've been with Outreach for about 2 years now, and I lead the SDR team out of EMEA. So I'm typically London-based. Just made it back to the States for this amazing heat wave that I get to be a part of. So enjoying that right now. How did I get to Outreach, and what does that look like for me? I was actually in the fashion industry for 5 years. Kind of was looking for something a little bit more fast-paced, hyper growth, was interested in getting back into the sales culture. So made the jump to Outreach, which is a Seattle-based company. And also at the time when I joined with them, they were also going through hyper growth as well. So started out as an SDR, knew it was going to be terrifying at first, and literally jumped in headfirst into it. Had so much fun, knew I wanted to get back into management. So kind of similar to Jessica's story, kind of put my hand up, worked really hard to earn the opportunity to lead and that kind of partner and mentor with some of my peers. And then after 8 months, the opportunity to build out the team in EMEA had opened up. So made the transition out there and scaled the team from 3 SDRs to 20 SDRs in just over a year. So that is a little bit about me and what I do at Outreach today.
That is fantastic. I love that. I love hearing the projection of SDRs, because I was an SDR. I wanted to be a lead, and then other opportunities came in. So it's really cool to kind of see how everyone progresses through their career there. And secondly, to this heat wave that you just mentioned, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and it's 42 degrees outside right now. So I've got a fan in the background. I'm sorry if it has any kind of background noise, but it's kind of mandatory just to let everybody know what's going on up here. Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. So happy to have you here. It's going to be great. Love it. And thirdly, last but not least, we have Ashley Dees here from Metadata, SDR manager. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley. Please just give us a bit of background on how you got to where you are and your superhero origin story as well, please.
Absolutely. Nice to meet everyone. I work at Metadata, a company I really love. This is the best team I've ever worked with. Just really genuine, fun, and nice people. So really grateful for that. I've been in sales for the past decade, different startups and B2B tech. My first role was an SDR. I've also been an AE and worked in customer success. And at Metadata, when asked about which track or which route I was hoping for or moving towards, it's always been without question managing an SDR team, because I love the SDR life. I never want to leave it. I love prospecting, experimenting with messaging, making cold calls. I know that's crazy, but I love it. So very excited for that. This is my first SDR team I'm managing. We're scaling right now, looking to actually hire 5 more SDRs in the next couple of months. So we're working on scaling out processes and tactics for outbounding and things like that. So very exciting.
Awesome, Ashley. Well, thank you so much for being here as well. Love to hear that you love cold calling, because that's one of the topics that we're going to speak to. So this is going to be great. I'm super excited to have all of you here today. This is going to be awesome. So now that the audience knows our panel, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and we can jump right into it and speak to what everyone's here to speak to. So just give me 1 second. I've got a bit. Okay, here we go. So to start off the conversation, Ashley, like you mentioned, there's a lot of reps out there that really don't like cold calling, right? So to start off the framework and kind of what each of you guys do within your organization and how you kind of help your reps get over that, how do you what tactics are working for you to help the reps get over the fear of cold calling, essentially, right? I know I had a big fear before. Now I've gotten kind of quite comfortable with the whole situation, but I know starting out it can be very challenging and very kind of scary to pick up the phone and call somebody out of the blue, right? So, Jessica, I would love to start off with you and just kind of get a better understanding of what you're doing with your reps to help them get over that fear, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what goes into not liking cold calling is actually boils down to the fear of cold calling, the fear of the rejection, the having someone hang up on you, or feeling like you may have missed the point or failed in some way. And I think a couple of things go into that. One, you're going to book meetings with people via different mediums, and so if you're afraid of the phone and you're not picking up the phone, you're missing a lot of opportunities out there that you could be getting that could help you get to your quota, that could help push you across the line. And I think fear also comes from lack of practice and lack of coaching and lack of understanding where your gaps are and what you could be doing better. And so I think that the main thing to get over the fear of cold calling is listening to calls with your managers, bringing your manager calls to review with you, listening to calls with your fellow teammates, and getting that feedback. And while there is probably a fear of cold calling, there could also be a fear of listening to those calls with someone else and being judged. But if you're not learning from your mistakes, if you're not learning how to get better, if you're not learning, maybe it's your wording or your objection handling or you're speaking over someone, there's all these techniques that go into cold calling. And if you're not practicing them, then there's no way you're going to get over that fear. And so I think that the top thing that we do with our team is a lot of call coaching. We do call feedback sessions on a weekly basis where we pick random people from the team. So you never really know if you're going to get picked or not. And you bring the call, there's other people on. And I think it helps push people out of their comfort zone while also getting actionable feedback. And it's inevitable. You can't kind of show up without a call. And so I think practicing and call coaching is one of the main things in our framework and what I like to do with coaching reps to get over that fear of cold calling.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think a lot of organizations out there don't actually take the time to really sit down and listen and work through that cold calling process, right? So it can be challenging when you just kind of pick up the phone and start calling, right? So how do we help the reps kind of get over that? And I love to hear what you guys are doing at Drift there. So Kaylin, I would love to hear your take on how you're getting your reps over the whole cold calling fear aspect.
Yeah, of course. I think that's like one of the biggest things is it's the fear of failure kind of going into it, right? Like even if you are bringing forward those calls and sharing it, you're like, is my manager going to think I'm failing at this? Am I not doing it good enough? So one of my favorite ways is just have fun with it. You got to laugh about it. Everyone's going to fail at it at first, and you just have to keep going at it, kind of like a compound effect, to get better at it over and over again. So a couple of the things that we do to really break this down is third day of like onboarding as an SDR at Outreach, we have this thing called the pizza pie grinder. And essentially you are giving like a fake script, but you are trying to sell a pizza. You don't work for a pizza company or anything, but the idea is you're calling up these prospects and you're trying to sell them $10 pizzas. And it's to get you comfortable on the phone, get you comfortable hearing that rejection, but also reading off a script as well. So that's kind of how we take that first step to the cold calling. And then from there, we're like, all right, now we got that out of the way. We got a couple of the crash and burns is what I call it. And then you're going to get the script for pitching the platform or whatever you are selling. And so then we give them the script, which kind of gives them the confidence. Okay, I have my talk track here. I'm good to go. Then from there, they're going to start making calls basically within their first week of onboarding.
Yeah.
Another way that we kind of take that script to make it fun, and when we're doing role plays and call practices so that they feel prepared going into it, is we turn to the script into a bingo card. So you'll get in groups of 3, and within groups of 3, you're going to have a prospect, an SDR, and then a coach. The coach is going to be the one holding the bingo card, and then the SDR will pitch to a prospect, and they'll go through a role play, and then the coach will be highlighting the bingo card. Then you have like consistent feedback across all your teams as you scale. and you can see exactly where the gaps are that you need to like lean into or where you're kind of missing within your pitches.
Yeah.
So that's a fun way to kind of clearly identify different ways to improve, have fun with it, and keep it consistent. And you can turn that into different games as well within the bingo cards. Another one that we do is call blitzes. So we'll do 2 different call blitzes, which means everyone on the team is going to be calling for hour blocks together. And essentially before we go into this, we all get together. We'll do like hype each other up. We'll go wheels up, which is we raise our desks and everyone's always standing and everyone's on the phones calling. Managers can listen in live. There's also different times where managers are actually participating in the call blitz, which is super fun just to get in the weeds with them. And the managers will kind of do a competition against each other, get super competitive. So we're kind of leading by example. And then another thing that we do within the call blitzes too, so there's technically like 3 different rounds. We'll challenge like some of our other like companies and friends. So like if someone in my network wanted to challenge us, one of my managers, Anastasia, just challenged Reach Desk, and we did outreach versus Reach Desk, and all of us were on the Zoom live doing a call blitz against the different companies, and we were trying to see who could book the most meetings. And this was people that had just started with us that week, all the way to our more tenured reps. So kind of just having fun with it and creating these games kind of takes the fear out of it. Everyone's winning together, everyone's losing together at the same time. So those are is that we're having fun with it. On the back end, we're also doing call reviews too, which I kind of think of this as like a sports game. You know, on the Friday before the sports game, to identify where they need to pivot, what are they going to do. So for us, we're going to be listening back to all of our calls. And when we're listening it back, when we hear the objection, then I think, is my connection okay?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out, but you're all good.
Okay, I was like, it just flat, unstable. When we're doing our call reviews, we'll actually, like, when we get the objection, we'll pause it and then role play how we should sound it or play it back. And then we'll listen to how we actually did it live. And so there's just different ways to play around with listening back to the calls. But those are a couple of the key ways that we're doing it, trying to have fun with it, breaking down that fear, and ultimately having a good laugh if it does not go how we expected. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's the beauty, you know, like not having too much expectations out of it, just like, you know, continually doing it, getting comfortable with the whole situation. I love the fact that you guys are doing the, you know, a group kind of call blitz. I've always found that was quite helpful when, you know, everyone's just getting after it and just going to town, picking up the phone, making the calls. It just kind of adds that, for me at least, kind of adds a bit of confidence that it's like, okay, we're all doing this together. We're going at it. It's all good. If anything happens wrong, that is what it is, but whatever, you know? So love that. That's great.
One quick thing on my end that like, I remember back when I failed as an SDR. I mean, I'm a manager now, but I can't say all my calls were perfect. And every call I made, I booked a meeting. And I think some of that is when you're coaching is talk about your failures as well and learn about what you've done and what your mistakes have been, and maybe share like your worst call that you've ever had and let the reps know like it's okay. It's not going to be, you're not going to do 100% of the calls that you make are going to book a meeting, but it's, are you learning from them? Are you getting better? And are you getting nuggets out of each of those?
That is, Jessica, that's like such a good point. If you share your own calls, and you can use it as a coaching mechanism too, to have the reps actually call out what were the bright spots here. Because if they're able to identify the wins within your calls, then they truly understand what the great call should be looking like too.
Totally. I love that. I think that's awesome too. And then it kind of shows that it's like, okay, yeah, I might be leading this team, but at the same time, you know, I fail sometimes, you know, right? So it's kind of makes everybody human, you know, like to some extent. Awesome, Jessica and Caitlin. Thank you for that. Ashley, I would love to hear your take on how you know, help your reps get over the whole cold calling fear.
Sure. And Caitlin, I love the bingo and the pizza activities. That's awesome. It's actually something I'm like working on now, trying to come up with ideas on how to gamify the role and do activities that will make their job more fun. So thank you for the inspiration there. So one thing as far as making cold calls with this younger generation, I think for us as managers, it's just going to get more and more challenging because compared to, past generations, these folks don't make calls as often. They text. So the idea of calls making them nervous is very understandable. So at Metadata, we don't actually do any call recording. And I find that it does alleviate some of the anxiety and fear there, knowing that their calls aren't going to be recorded and that I'm going to be listening to them. Luckily, we have a hybrid working environment, and I'm able to do some in-person work with our SDR team during 2 days a week. So on those days, we do in-person call sprees, and I sit there and I listen, and I can hear the speaker and the SDR, and then we do call coaching after, and I give my feedback. And on days that we aren't together, we do it over Zoom, where they make calls and I'll listen, and then I'll coach after. I think a large part of the fear and anxiety is caused, by lack of confidence, maybe associated with training. Of course, we want to make sure they're trained and feeling comfortable on how to handle objections and value props and things like that. But outside of that, I think a large part of it is them feeling like they're being a nuisance by calling somebody. So what I try to put in front of my team often is videos of happy customers and QBRs, and I show them our G2 crowd reviews of marketers who are happy and sharing that Metadata has made their lives easier. And I see it as a mind reframe, where they see it not as I'm calling to bother someone, I'm calling to help someone.
Yeah.
So I think that makes an impact. And for tips for SDRs who are nervous, making the cold calls. One of them, it might be kind of out there, but this is something that I used to do when I would get nervous making cold calls is, well, as the phone is ringing, I have my music on. And I find that it distracts my mind from being so nervous about the call because my brain's thinking about the music. And then by the time they either answer, I'm ready to leave a voicemail, I press pause. And worst case scenario, they hear a couple seconds of my Frozen soundtrack, but that's not the end of the world.
Oh, that's awesome! I love that. That tactic's great. Cool. Well, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate the input there. I've got a question here from the audience, from Sean. So, what is your reply when those who say cold calling is dead? Because nobody answers unrecognized numbers anymore. Do you think that's true or not? Jessica, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with that whatsoever. A third of my team's meetings are booked over the phone. We have a lot of success on the phone. I think if you're saying that cold calling is dead and it's not working, you have to have larger sample size. Maybe you're not calling at the right time of day. Maybe you're not making enough calls. Maybe you're not calling the right prospects. I think, like I said before, people can be reached in different form of medias. They might prefer email. They might prefer cold calling. They might prefer calling or LinkedIn. But if you're simply just not calling, you're leaving money on the table. You're not prospecting at the full effectiveness of what you can do, because people do pick up the phone. And so I think you should never say cold calling is dead, because it's not. It's simply not, in my opinion. I hope everyone agrees with me on the panel.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Good.
And in terms of another question that I've heard a lot too is voicemails. What are our thoughts on voicemails? Do we leave voicemails? Do we not? Do you think people actually pick up their voicemail at all? What do you think about that, Caitlin? I'll pop it over to you.
I'm really eager to answer this one. So Mikey, choose me. I was actually just going to say that. So I was going to piggyback on top of what Jessica was mentioning about the cold calling. Even if people cold calling definitely is not dead, it's an additional touch point. It helps build that momentum and it keeps it moving in the right direction. So even if you're not getting the answer maybe, or they're not picking up the phone, 100% leave the voicemail. There's a study out that shows if you leave 3 voicemails, you're 33% more likely to get a call back. And I think like the power of the voicemail, people do check their voicemails. And if you are adding value within the voicemail or keeping it short and brief, and you should have like 3 different voicemails that you're leaving, right? Like the first one could relate back to the personalized email that you sent them, get them to give you a call back. The second one could be another value add that, hey, just following up, wanted to touch base. And then the third one could be a call to action from there. But essentially, you should definitely be leaving voicemails, rotate kind of what the voicemails are so you're not leaving the same voicemail every single time. Then that will feel repetitive. So if you're adding value every single time or have a different call to action, or even tying it back to the original email that you send over with personalization, you should be able, you'd see some return on that. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Ashley, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Oh, sure. In my opinion, cold calling is not dead. Will never be dead, ever. Cold calling is great. Now, as far as I've spoken to several SDRs who have told me their hesitation to try to find people's cell phone numbers. And a lot of folks are trying corporate lines and company lines. Well, most companies and people are still working from home. So I encourage people, don't be scared to try to find their cell phone number. I know it's their cell phone number, but still, it's a great chance at getting the meeting scheduled. And for leaving voicemails, certainly. I've worked with people in the past who have gotten to the point where you've left, a few hundred voicemails. You're like, gosh, does it even make a difference if I'm leaving these voicemails? But yes, it does. There's data out there, statistics out there from different companies that show leaving voicemails has a huge impact on your conversions. So always worth it to leave a voicemail. I also saw a tactic recently of someone who creates an email subject line that's super unique, and they'll actually mention that subject line in their voicemail, which I thought was pretty cool. Not to say that everyone who listens to it is actually going to go search for your emails if it's the coolest thing ever, but they might.
Totally. And it might spark their memory in some way, being like, oh, I heard that. I've seen that before, so maybe I will engage a bit more, right? So I love that. That's awesome. Great. Well, that's fantastic. Love all your takes on that. Let's move on to the next talking point that we want to get through here today. So, as an SDR coming into an organization that, like Drift, Metadata, and Outreach, growing rapidly, you obviously have some very top performing SDR reps that are, hitting the number, doing all the right things. How do you change the mindset of some of the reps that may be underperforming or not hitting their quota, or not performing as well as some of the senior SDRs? How do you get them to be more what are your processes that are helping them get to a top performing rep? I will I'll push that over to Jessica to kind of start off there.
Awesome. Thank you. Mindset is huge in calling, and I think in really anything that you do. If you have a negative outlook on what you're doing, it's going to bleed into your day to day and ultimately affect your mood and everything. And so I have a mindset exercise that I like to run through my team, and the 5 points are to identify your negative intruders, realign your thinking, lock in your motivation, have a mantra, and get your head in the game. Cue High School Musical, get your head in the game song there. But under identifying your negative intruders, what I mean by that is what thoughts are going through your head at the time. Like, what are you thinking when you're about to pick up the phone? And really write down and identify with your manager on what goes through your head, because that's how you are going to realign each of those points. If it's, I'm afraid I'm going to get an objection, or I'm afraid someone's going to hang up on me. And so when you're realigning your thinking, what you want to do is dive into each of those points. And so if it's that I'm afraid I'm going to get an objection, like, okay, practice those objections. You want to be an expert objection handler to the point where when you hear an objection, you're almost excited to have that come up because you've practiced it. You know how to handle it. And also if your negative intruder is that you're scared to call C-level, you're scared to call people who are like VPs or above. I like to go into equal business stature. So yes, they might have some high fancy title, but they're not the product expert. They're not the person that is knowledgeable in the solution that is ultimately going to help their business. Because when we're calling, we're not just, dialing up people because we're trying to interrupt their day and bother them, right? We're calling because we have a solution that we truly believe is going to make a business impact or a personal impact on someone's day to day that is ultimately going to help them. And that's why we're calling. And so really just realigning why you're calling and why you're afraid to call in the first place, and then lock in your motivation, whether it's you're trying to get a promotion, you want to hit quota, you're trying to get to the next step, you want to make club. Really when you're dialing, you should know what each of those dials is for, because it's not just for nothing. It's pushing you to get somewhere. And then having a mantra. If it's as simple as just a quote or something that you're telling yourself before you're picking up the phone, just to get yourself in the mindset of you're ready to do this, and then just get your head in the game. Pick up the phone, make those dials. And I think a key part here is when you're cold calling, you should not be doing anything else. You should be treating every single dial that you make like someone is going to pick up on the other end. And so that's the exercise I work through with my team.
I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
I went a little quick there.
Yeah, I love the mantra too. It's like, a lot of sales reps, a lot, like from my experience, or even when I first started, I was just trying to hit quota. But then once I kind of figured out the mindset of, hey, I actually have something that can help this person or this business, and then going into the calls with that kind of mindset, that's kind of almost changed the game a bit, in my personal opinion, right? So, Ashley, I would love to hear your take on, how are you helping your reps, perform at their top notch?
Sure. When I think of underperforming reps, I sort of see two different buckets. The first one is there a lack of effort? And the other one is, are they struggling with an area or multiple areas of the job? And if I take a look through our dashboards and I see that there is a lack of effort, I don't want to assume the worst. What I want to do is have a check-in with them, person to person, and see how they're doing outside of work, because everyone's working from home. Well, most people are working from home. We all have personal things and life events and tragedies and things go on with our mental health, and that's going to happen. And it's something that I want to identify, to see what I can do to help support them if they need it. The other thing is finding out if they're self-aware. Do they know that there's a problem, and do they know that they're behind? And then from there, figuring out if they know, or if not, I can help identify it, what in particular they're struggling with, so we can set up some coaching training sessions to work on that and course correct and get them back on track. And then from there, unfortunately, if we are unable to get them back on track, we'll have to set up a PIP, and then proceed from there. They might need some more enablement things, but I will do anything I can to be able to get them back on track.
Awesome. That's great to hear, because you're so right. There's so many different factors that could be happening that could really affect the performance, right? You don't really know. You can't put yourself into the shoes of your reps day to day, especially when we're not in the office where you can't even see what's going on. So I love that you're taking that approach, and that's fantastic. Caitlin, I would love to hear your take on this as well.
Yeah, I think Ashley, you're spot on there. There is going to be like two different buckets here. I kind of look at them a little bit differently. And so, like, if there is like the lack of effort, I would maybe like a C player. That would be really hard to be investing all my time in the C player to try to save and help them and try to get them up. One of the things that we would do in the C player, we do this thing. It's called a mutual action plan. And so that is essentially having the consistent communication and the conversation if we are not pacing or if we're underperforming. And then having the rep actually take ownership of how they're going to get up to speed and how they're going to get to it. So rather than having myself kind of carve it out for them, I want them to come and tell me how are they going to achieve these results. That way they have ownership of it as well. And then I will help support them to get there. But ultimately, when a rep is underperforming, I'm trying to get them to take ownership of their results so that they are kind of carving out the way to get themselves up to it. That will be within the one-on-ones, peeling back conversion rates, trying to identify all of where the gaps may be, and then supporting them there. We also, mindset is another big thing that we lean in on. So when we kind of think about this, all of us are naturally trained where like 80% of our self-talk is actually going to be negative. So we're trying, which means about 20% is only positive, which is not a lot. And so when you're not performing, you're always going to have this negative self-talk that's actually dragging you down. So we do this exercise. It's called 149, and it's a math equation. It's kind of confusing, but anyways, 149 is essentially identifying 3 wins of the day. And within it, every rep is then trying to train themselves to figure out, okay, maybe I didn't get that meeting. Maybe this didn't convert to an opportunity, but what was my win in every conversation or every activity that I did do, so that you can have that compound effect and ultimately build and build on top of that, so that they are seeing these little wins, which eventually will get them up to speed and out of it by the end of it. And then lastly, we have an amazing mentorship program. So I know managers can like influence and have a great impact on all their SDRs, but sometimes they just need someone else to talk to that's not their manager helping them and coaching them. So one of my favorite things that we do is we pair up new hires with more tenured reps and kind of like mix it up a little bit. And so from there, they're able to lean on different peers, pick their brains, get different tips and tricks. If they are struggling, they don't just have a manager that they're speaking to. They have a mentor that they can talk to real openly about and get some honest feedback on. And I think we've seen some really great success stories out of that. And I think it's pretty amazing, even for a mentor to kind of see their mentee succeed too. So it's kind of awesome to watch that development happen over time. So
I do something kind of similar on the mentor side. So when I have a rep who's struggling and isn't seeming to get quota month over month, I like to run what I call a diagnostic. And so I put together a chart and I kind of outline, okay, this is where we're at for quota attainment month over month. And then let the rep know that like we're going to have an open conversation. I have a list of questions that like I want you to answer and just really kind of figure out where the gaps are. And then I am also going to answer the same list of questions here with you on the phone. So kind of getting their permission and setting it up where it's going to be a really open feedback session. And I can absolutely share some of those questions. It really starts off with, okay, like what do you think is holding you back from hitting quota? And then what do you think you can change on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Who on the team do you think is doing well? And that kind of goes into, okay, you think they're doing really well? Set some time up with them, figure out what they're doing that you're not doing. And then I also ask them, how comfortable do you feel with product knowledge? And how well are you using the tools that we have? Is there any additional training we need to do on your efficiency with the tools that we have? Because a lot of sales teams do have a robust tech stack. And if there's one that I haven't done a good job at like making sure that they know how to do, that's on me. And a lot of this comes out in this diagnostics that I like to run.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
I was going to say, I love that. I love like all the open communication and like having them kind of come forward on that and then being able to work through it. I think that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do too. Also your ownership mindset. I also like there's sometimes reps will be doing all of the right things. They have the right amount of activity. They're following the processes in a timely fashion. And then sometimes they're still having trouble. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's a that's a management thing. I need to go in and look at our messaging and look at our talk tracks that we're using, to see if they're antiquated and they need to be refreshed to enable them for success.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like the mentorship outside of your direct manager, because I know you want to perform for your manager, right? So having a space that you can actually really open up openly, I guess you could say, is awesome. I love that. I love how like I hear all of you guys doing kind of similar things. So that's fantastic. Because I know when I first started out as an SDR, it was challenging because I wanted to perform, but I also didn't want to say the wrong things to my manager, yada yada. So I love to hear that. I do have a question here, pretty open-ended question, but what common mistakes / trends do you see your average SDRs making in the role? So what do you see on a day-to-day that is really kind of a factor that you've seen in multiple of your reps as you're kind of training them to be top performers? Ashley, I'll start with you there.
Sure. One of them that I see, that I've seen, and I see in a lot of SDR outreach for people that are coming to me. And it's a mistake that we've all made, I'm sure, early in our SDR careers, of sending emails that are very generic, following up, I'm circling back, I wanted to see, and they're very self-focused. I can tell you want a meeting with me. I get it, and that's a line and very, very little value add. So I coach on email customization, really focusing on that first line of real estate that people see when they're in their inbox, and they can see a preview of your first sentence, making sure that it's not following up to see when I can circle back to you on Wednesday, because that's not cool or interesting. Nobody's going to want to click on that or read on that. So focusing on that, customizing emails based on their interest, and also really shifting their mindset to focus on value add. What can I share with this person that can make their life easier? That's a piece of content, or maybe not, or blurb of this is what we do and this is how I think it can help, versus focusing on how do I get this meeting booked for myself.
Totally. Yeah. Love that. That's fantastic. Caitlin, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think like kind of similar to what Ashley was just mentioning there. It's just like it's like almost moving too fast in the beginning, not slowing down to do the appropriate amount of research so that you do have that personalization on that first touch point. Mm-hmm. You're getting in there and you're kind of basically just kind of like spraying and praying and sending out a lot of automated stuff because you're just learning the processes and you're trying to keep up with the KPIs. You're going to burn a lot of opportunities with some potential prospects that could eventually start to turn into potential meetings or opportunities for you in the coming 2 to 4 weeks or so. So I think it's just kind of slowing down in the beginning. A lot of us have ramp schedules, so you have that opportunity to really learn the processes, absorb the information, do your research, so that you can go at it with the appropriate lens rather than just feeling like you have to spray and pray your way through it all.
Yeah,
that's probably that's one of, and then the next tip that I would just add to that too is when you are just starting out, just don't be afraid to fail. So I always just say, like, my advice for everyone is fail fast so you can learn quicker. Like, that first week should be the most uncomfortable week for you, and just go into it head first, and you'll be able to kind of speed along very quickly from there.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's the way to do it. Just throw it into the deep end and just get going, pick up the phone, make it happen. And you might lose for the first little bit, but eventually it's gonna come much quicker than taking your time to learn and really understand how am I going to do this call. Jessica, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's two main things. The first, I would start off to kind of echo what everyone else is saying, is value. If your messaging, if your script, if your emails don't have any sort of value, if someone isn't reading them or leaving that call understanding what is in this for me and how this is going to impact my business or like my day-to-day, That's not good. And then also people who can't handle objections, people who get one, or like someone responds over email saying, I'm not interested. And they're like, oh, okay. On to the next one. Objections are there because people, naturally kind of want to say no at first because they don't really understand what's in it for them. Like they're getting hit by a ton of other people, a ton of other industries, but if it lacks value and if you're not handling objections, I think that's where a lot of people fail early. So being able to both be an expert objection handler and use objections to insert in a value added question can kind of like nip both of those in the bud.
Yeah, totally. No, that's great. That's fantastic. Just got some good questions here, but in the case of time here, we only got about 10 minutes left. So I want to touch on the last talking point that we really want to speak to, and that is really to speak to how are you guys at your companies creating a culture of respect and trust in this remote selling world, right? I know it's very challenging when you're it's quite different than when you're working from home, whereas when you're at the office you have all of your colleagues, you're in the war zone, you can kind of make it all happen, whereas at home you're alone, right? So how are you guys creating this culture of productivity for your reps that don't have the direct one-on-one face-to-face, can just jump across to the other desk and ask you a question or something like that? I'll start off with Jessica. Please give me a little bit of a rundown on how you guys are doing it at Drift.
Yeah, I think culture is massively important to me. And one of the things I do with my team on Friday afternoons is there's a Japanese word kaizen, which is translates to, it's a Japanese business philosophy of continuous improvement. And so instead of relating it to business, I like to relate it to people's personal lives because I think people should have a healthy work-life balance. And so in our Friday Kaizen meeting, I have everyone pick one thing that they're going to work on for themselves outside of work that week. It could be anything from maybe you're going to work out or make your bed every day, something that you're going to do just for you. We go across the Zoom room at this point and pick one thing. We talk about if we did it the week before, help hold each other accountable. And the reason I like to do this on Fridays is because it ends the week not talking about work. I want people to go into the weekend and really enjoy it and have a meeting with my team where it's not work oriented. It's just getting to know what's important to people, and it's just a fun meeting where we laugh, we get together, and I hope the team likes it. I know I like it. It seems to be going really well. So that's one of the things that I do with my team.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's super crucial to keep the, at least the camaraderie and face-to-face with the rest of your team, right? To just make sure that everybody's okay, everyone's happy, everything's happening, right? So I love that you guys are doing that there. Caitlin, what are you doing to make sure that your reps are performing top-notch in this remote world?
Yeah, so I think when I think about back to creating respect, culture full of respect and trust, one of the biggest things that I think is the constant communication. So if the reps know exactly what the expectation is of them and you're kind of communicating with them, that's going to help build up that trust and respect there. One of the ways that we do this is we have this thing called a Miller 17. And essentially it is sales frequencies and then also sales competencies that when you kind of blend them together and if you track your sales and your frequencies, that will ultimately lead to your results. So every month we'll go through, the team knows exactly what their frequencies are and what their competencies are that they are building on top of month over month. So from there, we're able to have great guided conversations, build out our mutual action plans from there on where the gaps may be, but also see their improvement over time. So that is going to help build that area of culture. When I think about the fun culture and how we kind of bring the camaraderie together, a couple of the two big things that stick out to me is on Wednesday mornings, midweek, after our morning huddle, we do this thing called scoops, which is we'll spin a wheel of names and a random SDR or leader will be chosen. And they pretty much get 5 minutes to share anything about themselves, who they are, things like maybe their favorite drink, but they get to create a little slide deck and share with the entire org, basically a presentation on themselves, their family, all the fun things, their hobbies. And that's been really great for us to be able to kind of get to meet people, especially in the virtual world, as we scaled so quickly. It gives them an opportunity to kind of have that connection and find commonalities outside of work to chat about. And then the other thing is we have Outreach Boot, which, Mikey, you might actually be familiar with this maybe on Thursdays.
I haven't, but I know it, but I've never been a part of it yet.
So on Thursdays at 5 o'clock, everyone within on the US side, the outreach teams will do it. In EMEA, we get everyone in all the different orgs. So we're mixing CS, sales, ProServe. And you get on at 5 o'clock, everyone shares a beer or a drink together under the Zoom, and you get to give each other shout outs. So you're calling out a great shout out for someone on the week. So it's a great way to kind of build each other up and something fun to do, share a drink with them after a long week on a Thursday. So those are two things that we do.
That's fantastic. I love that. I think it's crucial to do stuff like that, right? To make sure everyone feels a part of this team, right? Especially, for instance, for myself, I came to Sales Hacker back in August, and I've never actually met anybody from the team, right? So it's nice to kind of face to face at least. But it's really nice to have these Zoom happy hours or like fun times to kind of just really get to know people deeper, and really kind of get to know each other as one. Ashley, what are you guys doing at Metadata to help your reps perform on the highest level in this remote world?
Sure. So as far as trust goes on my end, and I think most managers have access to different dashboards and tools that we use where we can see activity, emails, and number of calls and things like that, and lead to response time, which I do check occasionally, but I do make it known that I don't really require or ask anybody to make 100 cold calls a day. I set up cadences and processes and train on drift video and leaving LinkedIn voice messages and enable them with templates and ideas and help and do coaching. But I'm not strict on the, a number of calls or things that they have to make there. If they make their quota, that's great. I trust them to do that and ask for help when they need help. And I'll be there when they do if they're struggling in any way. But I encourage experimentation, and I like them doing a bunch of different activities on social and video, so we can learn what's working. And as far as building trust, I sort of envision 3 pillars for that: integrity, my own personal vulnerability, and showing them that I care. Integrity, of course, leading by example, always doing the right thing. We'll show them that your personal moral ethics and how you handle situations. Our SDRs are also our gatekeepers, and they answer our main phone line. So they get a lot of SDR calls coming to them, and they'll tell me when they hear people using maybe dishonest or manipulative sales tactics, and we discuss, and I say, wow, that's interesting. It's not something we want to do, though, of course. So that, and just our culture of being trustworthy and not using tactics that are, manipulative or tricky or dishonest ever. And I think people seeing that, oh, this is how we roll. Okay, well, I feel like Ashley's pretty trustworthy. Let's see how this goes. Another is that I'm open and honest with my own mistakes, and I say that I'm not perfect. I'm new to management. I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm vulnerable, and I share that. And then also I ask for feedback for how I can be doing better as a manager, and what things could we possibly improve in our department. And I think being vulnerable is something that helps people feel more comfortable and build trust. And then separately showing that I care, and of course always asking how they're doing outside of work. We also have a praise channel in Slack, that I use often to shout out our SDRs for cool achievements that they've made, so they know that, you know, I've got their back and I'm in their corner always. And also separately, I will admit I have a terrible memory, so I do have to take little notes. But when our SDRs mentioned that things that they like we were in happy hour the other day, and one of them said, "I really like this brand of gin." And I knew I wouldn't remember it, but I keep notes. I just keep like a separate little sticky note, and I wrote that down. And I've also have his favorite candies. And I was like, all right, well, one day when he's got a cool benchmark that he's met or a cool achievement that he's made, I'll surprise him, and I'm sure he'll be excited for that. But just really showing that you genuinely care about someone, that you don't only have your own work agenda in mind, I think really helps them, trust you more
Totally.
as a manager.
Yeah, I think recognition, I think, is huge for your reps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recognize their achievements and just give them praise, and that's just going to build them stronger and more so. We all got 1 minute. Sorry, Caitlin, did you want to say something?
I was gonna say one thing. Sorry,
Yeah,
so talkative. I was gonna say, Ashley, I think that's like huge, the little notes thing there, because right, people work for people, and that is such like a human touch. And it shows that you are actually listening when they're talking about it as well. And I cannot wait to hear the story when you do send that rep.
I'll send you a pic of him on Zoom.
Let us know. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, we only have a minute left here, so I just want to share my screen again quickly. Just give me 1 second, so I can let you guys go. And I just want to thank all of you, all 3 of you, for being here. It's been an awesome discussion. We had a great conversation. I've had an absolute blast. Very good to be with you here. Thank you, Drift, for sponsoring this webinar. It's been fantastic. Please go get your ticket to Rev Growth Virtual Summit. It's going to be a great event. So, again, thank you all. Jessica, Ashley, Caitlin, thanks for taking an hour of your day and sharing your beautiful nuggets that you guys have gained over the last little bit. So again, thank you so much. It's going to be great. Everyone, this is going to be recorded. It'll be sent to you after the webinar. And I can't wait to do this again. Thank you guys so much. It's been